What's up, Metalworking Nation? Welcome to the most recent episode of Strategic Thoughts with Uncle Mike and the boys.
Strategic Dogs. DAWGS.
Oh, man.
Like as in what's up?
Yeah.
What's up, dogs?
Strategic Dogs. All right, guys. I'm glad you showed up on time today. What's up?
Yeah.
We do our best.
Sorry, we were almost late.
How'd you do without me on that last one? Pretty good?
Better, way better. Although there was no structure to it, to be honest. We
I'm sure there
didn't
was.
have the
it doesn't
intro.
follow
Like
anything.
we just like rolled straight into.
Well, you know me.
Talking
Like
shop.
I'm rigid, structured, procedural. I don't have any time to joke around.
You're just cracking the whip.
It's pretty bad when you're the one keeping us in line.
Okay, back in line, guys. Come on, Uncle Mike. Sorry. Jeez. So I don't want to let you down. No, so yeah, today we were kicking some ideas around for what to talk about today, and we were like, I think you just asked us, am I the only one with a business degree? And I was like, actually, Mike, no. I did some college. I got a thing. I got a degree. But
I think we all did some college.
Some, yeah.
What's that? Tommy Boyer, who's like, I went to college for 8 years. A lot of people go to
So did
college for
I.
8 years. He's like, yeah, they're called doctors. But it's like, gosh, everything we do is about leading our manufacturing companies, and we talk all the time about what Making Chips is about, equipping and inspiring manufacturing leaders. And you think about like, okay, well, there's a difference between being great at like making parts and making chips, and then being great at like running a job shop, running a company, running a machine shop of any kind. And so we're kind of trying to bridge the gap here with probably like the rest of the year's worth of content.
It's such an important topic. Like,
Yeah.
It's the foundation of the book I always talk about, the E-Myth. The entrepreneurial myth is that if you're good at the craft of something technical, you'll be good at running a company that does that craft. And that could not be further from the truth. And but people get into it every day.
I have experience across Lord knows how many industries. And I will tell you my biggest observation of this industry is
I was in business in the 1900s.
And then from the last, I actually wasn't even part of the last episode, and I already know you've been talking back in the 1900s. I'm not 1492.
No,
I
but
came
this
over.
industry is terrible about taking your best mill operator and making them the mill lead or a shop lead
The
or
production manager.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, being a good operator does not translate to being a good manager, right? So whether I know we're going to talk more about ownership, but this industry is just, I think, notoriously bad about pulling your best people from what they're best at and putting them into some sort of management position that doesn't necessarily align with what they're good at.
Yeah.
They might be. I mean, some are.
It's like professional sports. I mean, I think Michael Jordan was a coach for a while, and like there's these great athletes who try to be coaches, and they're like, well, just do what I do. I mean, make all your shots. Just make all your shots. Win all the games like I did. It's like, no, man, you got to coach people.
I'm just looking it up here because I know that rang a bell. It's called there's a book called The Peter Principle, and that people get promoted to their level of incompetence.
Okay.
There you go.
So, yeah.
I like
You
that.
keep promoted. You're good at something until you keep getting promoted till you're not anymore. You don't have the skills. You weren't taught those things. They're different than the skills that, were relevant.
And then you usually don't get demoted back. You usually like find your way out. And so,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I can give you two examples in Hill and Paul. One of these, it will be near and dear to you, but when I bought Hill, we had a shop manager that was our best machinist, right? But quite frankly, he was not a good manager. And he's no longer here because you can't really move back, right?
Sure.
Whether the person doesn't want to, or whatever, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But
nobody's
but
like,
Paul,
man, I
the
really want to
example
take a
I'll
step
give to
back in
you
my
is
career.
right. The so I had a guy so the first person that I personally hired after I bought Hill, hired into the most basic role we have in the company at the time. And within a few weeks, I saw he had some leadership qualities to him that I liked. I started giving him more and more responsibility. Eventually, within a couple of months, I had him in charge of my department, and all the welders and stuff are saying, he doesn't know how to weld. I know welding better than him. You know weld better than me too. But that's not what I'm asking him to do. I'm not asking him to weld. I'm asking him to, schedule and coordinate our fabrication department. Mm-hmm. Fast forward, he moves into a new role to the point where he outgrows me and he works for Paul now. I'm talking about Kevin.
Yes.
Right. So, and
he's been great for the record. We did not poach Kevin.
You poached from Mike? No, I don't.
No,
I'm not.
No, I called Paul and said, "Hey, I've got a guy that, he's outgrown me, right? And he needs a new opportunity, and this is what I think he'd be good at." And he had a great, Paul had a great opportunity for him, and I think awesome. Paul, he's doing a good job for you, correct?
Oh yeah, he was here.
I guess we don't want to call him out on air if he's not.
Paul's like, actually, we're having a lot of problems with Kevin. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, no,
but he was not he technically was not, a good welder or machinist or anything like that. But he got to a point where he was in my top 2 or 3, managers, leaders in the company. And then quite frankly, kind of outgrew me, and it was time for a new opportunity.
Yeah.
But this industry doesn't do that, right? Like, we take our best lathe operator, we make him the lathe lead.
Mm-hmm.
And then same way, you're talking about with the E-Myth model, you're a good machinist, you probably would own a good machine shop.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah. And if you are, it's probably you're in the minority, because it's just not the same skill set. And so to come back to what you were talking about earlier, Nick, we're talking about a series of shows, probably, taking up most of the rest of this year, really focused on sort of a masterclass on how to all aspects of starting, running, growing, and building a machine shop, a world-class shop that can execute at the highest level, because there's so many people that need that.
Yeah. And, we were talking about degrees and business school and college, things like that. There's nothing against college. A lot of people get tons out of it, but I am a bit more skeptical than maybe prior generations on if it's worth the time and money, just because I think, gosh, I'm going to sound like such a whatever millennial here, but when I really want to learn something and I have the tools that are available to me today, I feel like I can really dive in and learn it, and what you'll get out of a business school, at least the way we do it in our country, is usually really general, so if I was going to suggest for my own kids, where to go to school, it's well, what do you want to do? And what's the best school for that thing? Cause go there and learn under somebody who can get you right into your career. But what you end up doing, especially with just a bachelor's degree, is you just get general business stuff. And not that there's no value to that, but if I think we were talking before on, what percentage of machinists want to own their own shop someday? If there's 100 machinists, how many of them are man, I'd like to own my own machine shop? And we think it's a pretty high number.
Yeah, sure, it's the majority.
So they already know what kind of business they want to run. So maybe instead of just getting some general broad business degree, they could just listen to this series and we'll cover a lot, and then we'll point them towards where to learn your financial statements, your cash flow statement, your P&L, your balance sheet, where to learn some HR stuff, some insurance stuff, some tax stuff. So, all the things that have really nothing to do with making chips on a machine, but have everything to do with running a good business. And so that's kind of where we're well, let's do it. That's what making chips is supposed to be. So let's be that. No more Uncle Mike talking about random crap from the 1900s. We can't do any more of these episodes.
And he had to walk barefoot uphill both ways to the shop in the snow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, we had a good time, kind of putting together a big outline, but you had a great idea, Paul. Before we start the series, why don't we ask the audience a bit? And there's kind of 2 segments of the audience, the way I see it. There's there's those that have started a machine shop, or a lot of them probably were on a machine at one point, and then now they're like running a business, not just running a machine. And they can, like, please, if you're listening and that's you have a lot of insight to like really avoid these pitfalls. I wish I would have taken some courses in this because I had to learn the hard way or whatever, right? I'm so glad I learned this. This is something I did really well. This is something I did really bad. Like, please share that with us. Reach out to us on LinkedIn, email us, whatever. Well, and then there's another set where it's like, I haven't started a business yet. Here's the things I feel like I already know, but I really want to know this, this, and this. I hope they cover it. So, if you're that segment too, please reach out and let us know, because we want this to be awesome and hit the mark. So yeah, when you're thinking about how to run a business, it's like a billion different topics, a billion different episodes. And we've done a lot of that in the past 460 episodes we had of Making Chips. But then we're like, okay, well, let's kind of make this more like a curriculum or a course, like kind of start to finish. After this series, people feel so much more equipped to like start and run their machining company. Okay, so it's like, well, then how do you break all that down? How do we structure that? And Mike, you had some good ideas and kind of how to do that. So
yeah, I think I think we had some fun kind of bouncing around ideas, but as you pointed out, you might be somebody that's thinking about doing it. You might be someone that's already done it. And, but when we just started kind of talking through like, what could that look like? First step is, how do you form a company? Right. I mean, like there's stuff you have to do with your state. There's choosing the location. There's like all those types of things.
Choosing the corporate entity type,
corporate entity type.
Well, S Corp, LLC, C Corp, all that.
Yeah. And those can be big decisions.
I'm going to have a lot to add in that episode, guys. Yeah. A lot. Just be ready, Mike. You're going to learn.
You're going to bring the fire.
I'm bringing the fire.
Major impact on your
S Corp, really?
Those
Why?
We're never getting anything done with this idiot.
Right. But those can have some major impacts on you. Maybe not as much in the first year as they do the fourth or fifth, right? And certainly when you start to look at selling and all those types of things, 10 years from now, they can have a really major impact. And then you got to figure out, like, how am I going to fund this? Do I have $1 million in the bank? Am I going to get an SBA loan for equipment? Am I going to start fresh? Am I going to buy a company? There's all sorts of options there you have on getting started. Then we get into some of the things that I'm not the specialist in, maybe is, how do I choose equipment and layout and infrastructure for my facility? How do you build a tech stack around it, right? So your ERP system, your quality management, all those types of things. Of course, now there's this whole world of AI and all sorts of things that you can consider of how that rolls in. How do I be really
leaning heavily on Nick for that section as well? I don't have any ideas to share. Conflict of interest.
Doesn't know anything about ERPs. Yeah.
Yeah, where we really will
I will have
rely
something to say on like the CRM side, after it's like ERP, but in like kind of the sales and marketing software and how all that works. Because
that's important to think about.
A lot to do with that in my life, but and then how bad it can be when it doesn't like play nice with your other systems and yuck. Like we'll get into that, I'm sure.
Yeah, and then you start getting into how do you find work, right? I mean, Paul. I bought a shop that already had work. Paul, you started a shop. Nick, you're a sales and marketing professional, right? So how do I go find work? How do I build up that book of business that supports everything I'm trying to do? And
along those lines, Mike, so like I can do that for an OEM, I anyone who's selling alongside capital equipment, things like that. That's not that I have nothing to offer someone who's in a different business, but we're not going to be the only ones doing this series. Someone who's really great at like sales and marketing for a contract manufacturing company, a job shop, like we'll bring them in for that.
Yeah, sure.
I know how to do my stuff pretty well. I'd like to think, but I don't really go sell a lot of job shop work. So why am I going to pretend on that? We're not. Just like always with Making Chips, we'll bring in someone who's super awesome at it and has kind of a system. Someone who's not just awesome at it, and can teach others. Because we just talked about how that's not the same person all the time. So,
Right.
Yeah. For
so
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Then, so now you're operating, you've got machines, you've got people, maybe, you've got some work. Like, how do you quote? How do you know what your cost basis is to even start where you need to quote so that you're making money, not losing money? How do you manage orders, from
even on the quoting side, it's like, how do you quote today? Like, and then what are some of these new emerging tools that can really help you with that? We're going to touch on that as well. Like, how are people going to quote 10 years from now? So,
Yeah.
kind of both. And it's not going to be only the latest tech that we talk about, but we're not going to avoid that either. Talking like paperless parts, for example.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, there's all sorts of emerging technologies out there, really, in all these topics, and when do you adopt those technologies, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
That's a really important topic. When?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's things you can grow into, and there's things you should start with right out of the gate, in my opinion, anyway. Then, of course, there's processing the order, and you got to actually make the parts and ship them, right? So there's that aspect, and a lot of resources out there we can all learn from, but then how do you do it better, right? Like, how do you optimize those operations so that you're performing at your absolute best? And Paul, I know you and I have talked about this in casual conversations and I think on shows, but the things that, I mean, there are so many times I wish I could start over. I mean, Hill's we'll be celebrating 50 years next year. I bought it 7.5 years ago or whatever. But I mean, sometimes,
does that mean you're over the hill?
Like, I can't, what's that?
After 50 years, you're over the hill. You should change the name of the company.
Over the hill
manufacturing.
But there, I mean, like, I can't help every time I leave IMTS, I'm like, man, I want to start from scratch, right? Like, how cool would it be to walk out of there with all new machines and all new tech, and but you can't. I mean, cost prohibitive to be at the to scale, to already be at scale. But how do you optimize what you have, right? So then we start talking about some of the machine monitoring and like KPIs you can track, and again, I think that's where some of the automation and AI rolls into the conversation in today's environment. Talking about where does AS, IS, all the different roles of certifications and regulations play into this. What should you chase?
The ITAR, AS 9100. What's that medical ISO?
1345.
1345.
Yeah. Can't just call it like ISOMED or something like that. You got to have a 15-digit number.
And then you start getting
into look stupid on the podcast.
Then there's all the dull, boring stuff that happens day to day, right? Like, so the purchasing and the invoicing and delivery, and I mean, just the things that you have to do, close the loop on selling a job and getting paid for it, right? I mean, and those there's elements of that can make or break you. You're just, I mean, if you're not managing that process correctly, you can go bankrupt just because you haven't got paid yet, right? I mean,
seen more than a number of shops do that.
Elements of that, yeah. And then you start getting into the, I think from there you start getting probably into some of the, how do you know if your business is doing good, right? Like, how do you read a financial statement? What is a P&L, balance sheet, cash flow statement? I mean, that's kind of the three Father, Son, and Holy Ghosts of accounting, right? Like, I mean, you got those three documents.
The Trinity
Most
of
people,
financial statements.
Yeah, the Trinity. Most people understand their P&L. Some of them understand their balance sheet. Nobody understands a cash flow statement. I mean, that's almost rare. But you need to. It's critically important. Businesses don't go banking for anything other than the fact that they don't have cash. And your cash flow statement tells you that, right? So understanding what you can do with that to manage your business is critically important. Now you've got growth that you need to talk about. You've got all sorts of things, like, Paul and I have talked some about, vendor management, your compliance and those types of things. And then just how do you maximize the business and start, I know we've talked about this several times on By the Numbers, but at some point you've got to start managing your business like you're going to sell it. Right. So, and what that what that shift in your mindset is, how do I maximize the value of my company? Right. It's versus how do I maximize this job I'm working on? But how do you get to a point where you're always trying to grow the value of your company? Because you are going to sell it someday. Might be 25 years from now.
How do you even come up with a valuation? What are the different methodologies to that? A lot of this, like you said, will tie into our shows. When we talk about the latest manufacturing technology and automation, like, a lot of that's lights out. When we talk about business valuations and high level financial stuff and KPIs, a lot of it is by the numbers. When we talk, Paul at Machine Shop Mastery, so much these like anecdotal stories and the real human personalities behind successes and challenges and things like that will probably pull some of your best guests who've done a great job at this, or like, hey, let me warn you, don't make the same mistakes I made in this area.
Yeah, you bet.
So we are going to bring a lot of good guests into here. And, another thing, just to plug our buddy Paul here for a second, the way he's built ProShop is kind of like very synonymous with this whole course. Like I'm building an ERP system that if you follow it the way it's supposed to work, like you'll be really good in a lot of these areas. But this course will go beyond that too, as well. It'll do a lot of like some of the people stuff that's not even, attached to any sort of business information system. How do you create that kind of incredible culture that you would want to have and have a performance-based energy around your team? And how do you gamify compensation so that as everybody elevates themselves personally, it elevates the business performance, and we all get to share in, increased compensation and things like that. So pumped about it, man. Mm-hmm. I think this is going to be really good.
Yeah, I was about to make a joke that we are coming out with a culture module.
Are you really?
I was about to make a joke that we are, but
he said a joke.
Quite honestly, yeah. You know what a joke
it's Pong,
is?
Culture's always like ping pong, and so it's just like Pong on the screen. Right. Everyone's just, they got a great culture. You see that ping pong table?
But quite honestly, there's what it makes me think. There's so much of what we just touched on. And the difference between having those aspects of the business functioning really well and smoothly versus not totally changes the culture of the business. Like when things are going really poorly and you're late and you're stressing and you've oversold the business, or you're not keeping up on preventative maintenance and your machines keep going down, and or you're not projecting your cash flow very well and you're just scrambling to make payroll, like that impacts the culture of the business. That impacts the stress levels of everyone coming in every day.
Yep.
And and we have
such a good point.
And the reason I bring it up is we have seen, and this is like almost sort of like an amazing thing. And it goes back to the episode that Mike, we recorded, about, kind of our backgrounds and ProShop and you implementing it and all that. But, and my partner, Kelsey, designing, all these things that these thousands, hundreds of companies are now using, soon to be thousands. We've had people tell us that after putting stuff in and having things like get a lot better, their culture has improved, and like people are kinder to each other as a result of having less stress in their daily life.
100%.
Which means they're hopefully bringing that kindness and stress back, less stress back to their families, back to their communities, to their friends, to their partners. But yeah, so I'm glad you brought up culture, Nick, because it is.
Well, so Paul, we will have this woman on. She's incredible. Her name's Karen Ross. She wrote The Kind Leader.
Oh.
She also co-wrote the Toyota Way to Service Excellence, which, anyone who's heard of the Toyota Way, it's like the lean book. So she's got like lean through the eyes of service. Like she worked in hospitals and all these non-manufacturing environments. And then to the point you just made, like it's kind to run a great business and it's unkind to run a chaotic business. and you mess up people's lives when you run a chaotic business. So just
100%.
being a kind leader is like, she wrote an entire book about it. We'll have her on to talk about it.
It's one of our core values, kindness.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
That is
Paul,
so cool. Can't wait to.
So you'll
I
love
cannot wait
to
to
I can
meet
tell
her.
you,
She's so cool.
I mean, I think that's a great point, because I can tell you, having gone through a couple of up and down cycles in the 7.5, 8 years we've owned Hill, I'm a lot nicer guy when we have a lot of cash in the.
So my wife's a lot nicer when we have cash in our bank account too.
I mean, when I'm not worried about making payroll and making accounts payable and all that, things are just better. And but a lot of the things we want to talk about in this series is going to hopefully make sure you have more cash in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you bet.
And we'll just kind of leave it with a cliffhanger here. There's going to be an incredible partner to this.
Yeah.
And many partners, but there's going to be one like really great partner to this that we're going to be doing this in collaboration with. So we'll save the first episode for kind of that announcement. But, anyone who's done any marketing or content strategy or anything like that knows you got to have a content strategy. You have to have a plan and a calendar for it. And part of what's made Making Chips so timely and authentic is we just kind of talk about whatever's on our hearts from week to week. But this year, we're really going to be on this program. We're going to be on this kind of like build your machine shop. Run your machine shop. Don't just run your machine. And so, we'll figure out a really good title or something like that. But that's what we're going to be doing for a while. And we need your help with that if you're listening. So we want it to be awesome. So we get so much good feedback every week. It's awesome. I love sharing it with you guys. And when you share it with me, it's so cool. So please, what do you want to hear? If you're that aspiring shop owner, aspiring leader, what do you want to learn? What haven't you been able to find? And you're like, man, I wish someone could just teach me that. Let us know. And then if you've been there, done that, and you have a lot to share, let us know. Please cover this. Make sure you cover that.
Well, it's great when the community collaborates. That's one of the best parts about this community. It's so collaborative. So this will be better with the feedback and the input from everyone in the audience from the Metalworking Nation.
Yeah, so help us equip and inspire you and your peers, and shoot us feedback like you always do, whether it's by leaving a review on whatever your podcatcher is, Spotify, Apple, whatever. Probably the most popular way people get in touch with us is email or LinkedIn. Probably LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
So what you guys say? Yeah, because we're on LinkedIn all the time trying to keep up with Mike and his posting schedule. So he's doing a great job, and I'm super jealous. But just reach out to us, and thank you for listening, and let us know how to make this series even better.
Because we want to.
Because if you're not making chips,
you're not making money.
Not making money.
Bam.